Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program Teacher Certification course. My name is Mr. Krause, William. If you're standing here in the Peaceful Solution headquarters or wherever you are, please be seated. Get yourself a pen and paper, pencil and paper. Go ahead and download the book on the top of the Facebook page. We're in the Respect Unit, Teacher's Manual, and we're in Chapter 2, which is Respect for Yourself. And we left off on page 30 in the last class. We just got to page 30, didn't quite start it yet. Remember, we're learning about the topic of, this book is called Respect, okay? And we're learning what respect is, and one of the first steps is learning how to respect ourselves, because if we can't respect ourselves, we can't learn to have that care and concern for ourselves, then we won't show the same for other people. So it's very important to learn to value ourselves first. Let's go ahead and go back to page 3 real quick. Page 3. In the chapter 1, where it talks about the value of respect. And in the middle paragraph, it says, in this unit of the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program, you will learn how to develop the positive character trait of respect. And that's just one of the 9 traits that we teach in the intermediate series of the Peaceful Solution. And you can find those traits, in every book. I believe in the index, not the index, but on page 204 of the manual, of this particular manual, there's a list of positive traits, and I think we'll be going over some of them this evening to rehearse and remind ourselves of the other traits that actually go with these traits. Respect, you can't have one character trait without the other, because they all work, as David would say, synergistically, okay? They all work together as a whole, okay? And if you don't have one, if you break one, you really, if you think about it, you break all of them, okay? If you don't keep one of these traits, you break all of them. So, and we'll learn as you go along. You'll start to see the correlation. On page 3, it says, respect means to recognize the value of people and things and to treat them with consideration, care, and concern. Now, you're a person, so you need to value yourself and your things and treat your things with consideration, care, and concern, just as well as you treat other people's with consideration, care, and concern. So, having reminded ourselves of that, let's go ahead and turn back to page, 29. And actually, I guess, let's go ahead and go back to, let's go look at the step that we're in. Let's go to LP2D on number 5. We're still on step 5. And one thing you notice in step 5, it talks about page 28, and then step 6, it goes to 31. So, you can necessarily safely assume that you're supposed to do page 30 in step 5 as well, because step 6 starts with page 31. So even though it doesn't say anything about that page, as a teacher that that's what you should include. So on step 5, which we've been working in, it says explain that conformity in many cases can be positive and is a normal part of the way we socialize and make friends. Remember, we went over conformity last time. About conformity meaning to fit in. To fit into a group, to fit into a class of your peers, or to fit into a society. To conform means to just simply to fit in, but to a certain standards and customs, okay, or rules and principles. We really like to explain it, when you put on a sock, the sock takes the shape of your foot, so it conforms to the shape of your foot. That's what conformity is. It means fitting in, okay, if you can just use the sock as an analogy. Okay, so it says, stress that it's important to learn how to distinguish between positive and negative peer pressure. And we learned about peer pressure. Remember, peer pressure is an influence, just like drugs and alcohol, just like video games or entertainment. These are influences because they have the ability to affect the way we think, the way we feel, and the way we act. And peer pressure is no different. It has that ability to make us somehow sometimes feel uncomfortable, okay, with what we're doing, or sometimes make us feel like, man, if I don't do this, my friends are going to think I'm a square. If I don't go along with this, they're all going to think I'm some kind of cop. If I don't take that toke off that joint, they're all going to think I'm an FBI agent or something. So, what do I do? Well, you need to stand for something or you'll fall for anything. You need to stand up for what's right. Don't even put yourself in the situation where the joint shows up in the first place. Where do they smoke joints? They don't just pull one out in the grocery store or, it's usually at some party or, and sometimes it could take you by surprise. You could be driving down the road with one of your acquaintances and, they pull something out and ask you if you want to try it. And it might put you on the spot. You feel very uncomfortable. You're like, man, what do I do? He's my friend, and I don't want to, I kind of like this person. I don't want to lose him as a friend, Do I tell him no? Man, it's going to make me feel kind of strange, like I'm some kind of, weirdo or something if I say no to that marijuana or that beer or whatever they're trying to give me. Remember, you're dealing with underage children. They're not supposed to be drinking, okay? So remember that when we're talking about these things. Okay, so peer pressure, although subtle, is nonetheless powerful. Instruct students to I'm in the wrong one. Okay, it says, have students read the section entitled The Dark Side of Conformity and Peer Pressure and choose volunteers to read Kasha's story. We've done that. We went through all that. And we asked the questions, about Kasha and Steve. But you notice it doesn't tell you anything else, but that just means you need to do all the way through page 30. So let's go up to page 29 and just do a quick review. Go ahead and put up the first visual for the audience here. Remember, as a rehearsal, we talked about on page 29 just the facts about the various forms of risky behavior that teens face today in our society. And these are just a few, These are some of the main ones. We went over alcohol, marijuana use, ecstasy, inhalants, and I'm sure, there's meth involved now, premarital sex, which is sex before marriage, which, opens the door for teenage pregnancies and STDs. And, as we learned in the last class, these STDs, a lot of people, if you notice, they pop up mainly in people between the age of 15 and 25. Those are very active years, teenagers, and we're going to be talking a little bit about judgment tonight because, as we've been trained in the Peaceful Solution, judgment, your ability to make decisions, sound decisions, it takes about 25 or 26 years for a brain to develop to where it can make those decisions. So that's why these teen years are really, really, really dangerous. And, a lot of times you'll tell a teen something or a young person something and they just kind of look at you, with that blank stare like, what do you mean that's going to hurt me? What are you talking about? That's not going to hurt me. Right? Well, you don't know what you're talking about. Even though you've already been down that road, you've already suffered all those things, all the consequences that come from breaking the rules. You're already aware of it. You're just trying to share with them what you already know, but they still don't have that in many cases. That brain, that part of the brain, which we're going to talk about, the frontal cortex, still is not completely developed, the frontal lobe of the brain, where they can make a sound decision. And plus, they need more information. You got to remember, over the years, your first 6 years of life, you learned your basic moral compass, different things about right and wrong. But certainly you don't know everything by the time you're 6. And so, as you go along, you learn more information. You gain more experience. You know, the influences that are around you, the peers that are around you, the environment at home, you know, the information that you gather over those years is going to be collected in your brain and in your mind and your subconscious. And even though you might not even remember the things you learned when you were very, very young, they're still stored in your subconscious mind. You remember those things. And all this information collectively, if it's the right information, right, if it's true facts and not false facts, it's going to help you to gain better understanding and a sound mind and judgment later on when you're about 25 or 26. As long as you've been putting the right things in your brain and not the wrong things like marijuana, ecstasy, inhalants, alcohol, overusing alcohol when you're old enough to drink alcohol, etc. Now, we also learn on page 29 that you could acquire STDs by having sex just one time with someone who's infected, and that people with an STD, you know, they can look healthy and normal. You don't know that they're infected. Okay, so put the visual back up again. I'm sorry, I kind of jumped ahead on that, but I want to go over a couple of them because it talks about judgment, impaired judgment in both of these particular drugs. And remember, alcohol is a drug, okay? Now it says abusing alcohol is just as dangerous as abusing drugs. It says alcohol intoxication impairs judgment and coordination. This leads to memory lapses. Now remember, this isn't talking about just using alcohol. There is nothing wrong with alcohol if it's used properly. Okay, it's abuse of alcohol. And that's what this is talking about here. Alcohol intoxication means drunkenness. Intoxicated means, you know, toxic means poison. In other words, you've done too much to where it's going to harm you. It's going to bring some kind of harm to your mind and your body in some way. And it says it can distort or it impairs your judgment and coordination. But also marijuana, it says the same thing. Smoking marijuana can impair your short-term memory, and it also affects the part of your brain that controls your emotions, memory, and judgment, okay? And so if you're a teenager and you're already short on, you know, your brain hasn't fully developed in that area of the brain where you can make a proper judgment, and then you impair it even further with drugs, alcohol, and STDs, because STDs also affect the brain, okay? And remember, you don't just get an STD, you know, they don't just float, you know, out of the sky. You have to do things to be able to get them, okay? You have to engage in certain activities, premarital sex, that you shouldn't be engaging in, should be saving that for marriage. And I guess you could say they do float out of the sky in some cases, because STDs are in the atmosphere as well. They're in the water and they're in the soil. But for the most part, what I'm saying is you're not just going to get an STD by practicing the peaceful solution. You're going to be, with the knowledge you gain in the peaceful solution, you're going to know how to avoid those STDs, whether they're in the public restroom, whether they're, with that girl or that boy that you just think you have to have. You're going to know what to avoid so you can avoid getting infected with one of these very, very, very bad diseases, okay? So I told you in the last class that there was a judge. If you can, actually, no, let's go to the next slide, because I want to show you a picture of the frontal lobe of the brain so you know what we're talking about here. It says the frontal lobe is a part of the frontal cortex. It's a part of the brain that plays a role in memory, attention, judgment, and other vital functions. As you can see, it's right there. It's called frontal lobe, so it's in the front, so you should be able to see it. And by the way, the front is on the right, not on the left. It says damage to the frontal lobe can occur as a result of dementia. Remember, we talked about dementia in the previous book, that people were getting dementia from the mad cow. Remember the mad cow disease from eating the infected beef? Y'all remember that, right? Because people aren't practicing self-control and they're throwing in certain things into the animal feed People are developing dementia-type diseases of the brain where they can't make a proper judgment, okay? And they lose their faculties. They're not able to walk. They're not able to think properly. And pretty soon, this debilitating disease kills them, okay? Damage to the frontal lobe can occur as a result of dementia, a traumatic injury, multiple sclerosis, a brain tumor, or a stroke. That can damage this frontal lobe of the frontal cortex of the brain. And I was telling you in the previous class that at one time we had a judge in Laredo, Texas, that he actually made another video besides the one I'm going to show you where he went more deeply into it. But if you listen to this particular video, he does describe some of the things that he saw as a judge and some of the things that he learned as a judge, because he went and got educated about the damage that drugs does to that frontal lobe, the frontal cortex of a person's brain that he didn't have any idea about. And that's why education is important. He said, I wouldn't have made the judgments that I made, the decisions that I handed down as a judge, I wouldn't have made them had I known this information. Okay? And he was humble enough to admit that. Okay? Where a lot of people, we've had, I know I've heard over here, even to the east of us in Dallas County, there used to be I think there was a district attorney there, that was, there was a lot of people that were innocent of certain crimes that were sitting and rotting in prison that could have been released because they had exculpatory evidence, meaning evidence that would have exonerated them of the crime. But he sat on it knowing that that person was sitting there and he was wrongly accused and wrongly imprisoned for a crime. And he didn't have the humility to admit they made a mistake, that they were wrong, and free the person. Okay, so that's why I say this man, this particular judge, when he realized through education and information that he didn't have the proper information and he was passing judgments down that weren't based on, the gathering of facts, the education. Remember, education is the top trait in the peaceful solution. You do remember that, right? We're going to go over that again tonight just to remind ourselves of these character traits, but that because every time we say positive character traits, that doesn't mean we're going to remember, your students are going to remember all those character traits. There's 9 of them that they have to remember as we proceed through the program. You can't just say, well, we're in respect now, so we don't have to worry about self-control or determination or being trustworthy and honest. We're in respect now. No, it all goes together, okay? So I want to play this video. Now, this video was from 2009. What's that, 14 years ago? Unbelievable how fast time flies. So let's go ahead and play the clip. Oh, wait. Sorry. This is let me tell you where this is at, too. Sorry, guys. This was at an award banquet. Let me give you just a kind of a background so you can understand what you're watching, so you know why he's there and why those people are there. Back in 2000, let's see, what was it? In 2004, I received a phone call from the Peaceful Solution headquarters in Abilene, Texas, and I was asked if I would consider relocating from Houston, Texas to Laredo to help in that area with people that were requesting the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program to be taught in their schools and in their community, various places in the community. And I was willing to do so. I went ahead and went down there. There was another gentleman down there also that was promoting the Peaceful Solution in that area. We got together and for 5 years, I taught the Peaceful Solution. We taught the Peaceful Solution out of a little garage at a driving school that the owner of the driving school allowed us to use. Eventually, we moved into a bigger location, but over that period of 5 years, we had, hundreds of students that came through the Peaceful Solution program from all over the community. we decided, we coordinated with Abilene, the headquarters here in Abilene, and the author of the Peaceful Solution, Yisrael Hawkins, decided, let's have an award ceremony for all the people that we can get in touch with that have taken part in the program over these years. And I believe there was about 120 people that showed up to the event, and all the dignitaries from the Peaceful Solution program here in Abilene, Texas. Not only did they go to Laredo, Chris and the other teachers that you see, not only did they go to Laredo, they also brought a catered meal. I think it was, I want to say it was, what do you call that steak? Fajita. Yeah, it was steak fajita meal and homemade pies and bread, and man, it was wonderful. It was the most wonderful meal I think I've ever had. And so they fed everybody that came as well. It was a really great event. It was called Building Moral Excellence Award Ceremony, is what it was called. Building Moral Excellence Award Ceremony. So that's what you're watching. This took place back in 2009. So now you can go ahead and roll the video, please. This man here is a very special man. I don't think people know yet just how special he is. I don't think he knew he was so well known throughout the world for the statements that he made about character education and the importance of teaching our children instead of locking them up. For that, we want to remember and honor him tonight for those statements. He believes we need to educate, 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 not incarcerate, incarcerate, incarcerate. We need to tear these jails down. We need to put people to work. We need to start implementing restitution. We need to start implementing character education, teaching these people so they can turn from these kind of behaviors instead of just incarcerating them and locking them up. So for Judge Manuel Flores, I would like to come forward. He was judge when this took place, and I got the judge written on him.
I guess I'll take the opportunity to thank everybody here. Like you, I have great love for my community and for mankind. I do want to say some things that are important based on what Mr. Krause has said, and I was not aware when I read that article that he took to me, I was not aware that I had been quoted, and I couldn't even remember that I had said those things, and I read it and I said, you know, did I really say this? But one thing I want you to be aware of today, and I am no longer a judge, I am no longer in public service, I am private life as an attorney. I'm out of politics completely, but I want you to know that today in this country we incarcerate more than 1.2 million people. That we have more people incarcerated in the United States of America, the land of the free, than any other country on earth. That's a fact. What I have wanted to bring forth is the idea that lengthy incarceration, severe punishment, does not solve our problem with crime. It does not solve the problem with crime. You know, many times I sat in judgment and I scolded people and I said, you know, I gave you a chance and here you are again, you violated the law again. I didn't understand that when someone is addicted to drugs, that they cannot win the fight against drug addiction on their own, that they need help. When we send all these people to the penitentiary for lengthy periods of time, it is very difficult for them to come out and be rehabilitated. 3 things they can expect from lengthy incarceration: tuberculosis, sexually transmitted diseases, or mental illness. That is the archaic penal system that we have in this country today. I am happy that I am no longer a judge and that I don't have to make those decisions and send people to the penitentiary. I didn't understand those things when I was serving. You know, I saw one judge look down on an individual and said, you know, we gave you a chance to get out on bond and we tested you and you tested positive, therefore you are not going to get credit and you'll be sentenced more severely. You should have stopped using drugs. And I was thinking to myself, sitting there waiting for my turn with my client, thinking, telling that to a drug addict is like telling someone with diabetes or cancer, you shall not have diabetes, you shall not have cancer. They can't help themselves. We need to work to make this a better world. Thank you very much.
Okay, so as you can see, as I said, the gentleman, Mr. Flores, who is now working in private practice as an attorney in Laredo, Texas, a very successful one, by the way. He's still doing that work because of an education that he received, because he got this information. It changed. It was life-changing to him. So never underestimate, remember what we said about teaching an old dog new tricks? Okay, it's possible to do so with the proper character education and the proper information. Okay, so having gone over that, let's go ahead and go back to page 30 where we left off. And let's pick up tonight where on page 30, and it says, people who respect themselves will not be pressured into doing something that is morally wrong. And remember, we just went over what it means to respect, what the word respect means, but what does it mean to respect ourselves? Let's give ourselves a reminder and go back to page 26 real quick and look at the top where it says self-respect is knowing who you are, what you stand for, and what you value. Self-respect also involves caring about yourself physically and mentally to promote positive growth and development. Now remember, if you're using drugs, and if you're a teen using alcohol, or if you're an adult abusing alcohol, you're not caring for yourself. Remember it says you're not caring about yourself mentally, because you're actually doing damage to your ability to make sound moral judgments or sound judgments at all. If you're driving it impairs your ability to drive, your motor skills. So, you're impairing yourself physically, but also mentally. Remember that. So, here's the bottom line. It says negative conformity in the form of peer pressure can cause you to make choices that you will not make on your own. When you choose friends who have positive goals and respect your opinions, you will be less likely to be pressured into doing something that is wrong. If your friends, quote, unquote, cannot respect your decisions, then reevaluate your friendships. And that's why, we went back and we rehearsed the information in the acceptance unit about friends and friendship and the importance of choosing friends and the stages that you need to go through. Remember the 4 stages of choosing friends, okay? It shouldn't just jump right into relationships, whether it's boys with other boys, etc. We should not, girls with girls, etc. We shouldn't be doing these things. We should be remember what we learned in the Peaceful Solution in the first unit, the character unit, about in chapter 1, where it talked about more than meets the eye. Okay? There's always something behind the veil, so to speak, behind the curtain that you don't know, that you need to get more information about before you decide to associate yourself with anyone or anything or any entity for that matter. Many people have devoted their whole life to certain entities, to certain groups, and only to find out, 20, 30 years down the road that they've been lied to all this time, that everything that they were told turned out to be untrue. Yet they devoted their self financially, spiritually, gave, a lot of their time volunteering, etc., only to find out that everything that they had done was all for naught. And remember what we learned in I believe it was chapter 5 of it might not have been. Actually, I'm thinking of the high school unit now, so I'm not going to go there, but anyway, I remember when I was living in Houston, Texas, the Enron company failed. And, 5,000 people were out of work in one day. This was back in 2001. 5,000 people in the community lost their jobs, lost their pensions, their 401ks, all dissolved. They had nothing because the couple people in the company were embezzling money. So they worked, 20, 25 years in that company all for nothing. Okay? So that's why I'm saying you really got to investigate. You really got to know what you're getting yourself into before you do things. Okay? So it says, a real friend will encourage you to respect your mind and body by not smoking, abusing drugs and alcohol, or engaging in premarital sex. It's really important to really drill into the mind of your student, that remember you're dealing with children that, again, their minds are still developing. They're still looking at you like, what are you talking about? How can that hurt anybody? They do it on TV all the time. I don't see anybody on TV getting an STD. No, because they don't have any show on TV where, it shows the person that just had premarital sex with somebody go to the doctor and find out they got gonorrhea or chlamydia, or they have a heart attack and they go and they say, oh, you had that heart attack because, that chlamydia thing was eating at your arteries, and caused your blood clot in your valve there by your heart. And that's why, you had a heart attack. They don't show nothing like that on TV, They have, shows like Sex in the City, but they don't have a show that's like STDs in the City or How I Got Syphilis or, some movie like that. They don't show anything like that. So they're not really showing you reality. But this is reality. 20 million people, didn't we just hear 20 million new cases every year in the United States, I think, 20 million new cases? That's quite a lot of people. Okay, that's quite a lot of people. So there should be something being said, but there isn't. The only time you hear about STDs is when the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, puts out their annual report about how it's worse this year than it was last year. The STDs are just out of control. There's super gonorrhea and there's all these different diseases that they have no antibiotic or any kind of drug will even touch, right? That's the only thing you hear about it, but you don't see anything being, the behaviors on the television are not offset by information, that shows you, well, if you do this, here's what you can expect. No, they make it all look fun and pleasurable, pleasing, but they don't show the reality of these things. Okay, and that's why you need to really drill this into your student's mind that, look, the reality is what the Peaceful Solution's teaching you. That's the reality that you can expect. And a real friend will warn you of the risk of STDs or sexually transmitted diseases and the consequences of unwanted pregnancy. So you can consider a teacher of the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program as a true friend. Okay? That's your real friend. Your real friend is the one that's teaching you and instructing you and trying to warn you, hey, don't go there. You stick your hand in that hole, there's a snake in that hole. It's going to bite you. Now, you can be like Steve Irwin and stick your head in that hole. But, Steve Irwin stuck his head in holes. You guys remember the guy on the Animal Show, right? I think he got stung eventually by some kind of stingray or something. Got stung in the heart, man, and it's a very terrible thing. But he used to stick his head in those caves, But the fact is, there was already a camera in the cave. That's why you saw his head going into the cave, because the cave was already checked out, okay? But you don't just stick your head in a hole, or your hand in a hole somewhere. I know I don't. That's like jumping in a pool full of sharks. I'm not interested in doing that. And you know what? You know what a pool full of sharks is? It's called the Pacific Ocean. And, that's a pool full of sharks to me. I'm not jumping in there. I can't swim anyway. So, but anyway, it's dangerous. It's risk taking. I'm not saying swimming is. I'm saying, for me it would be. But, doing these kind of activities that they show in the shows on these, these Animal Planet and some of these other, where they make it look real exciting to chase wild animals or, do all these risky things with bungee jumping or whatever else they're doing, jumping out of airplanes or out of spy balloons or whatever they're doing. They make it look excitable and adventurous, but it's what it leads to or what it can lead to that they're not showing you. You only read about it sometimes in the newspaper afterwards, and you're like, oh man, that poor guy. What do you mean he died from bungee jumping? Man, didn't he check his strap first? Well, of course he did. He thought he was perfectly safe. He just didn't know the cord was too long and he hit the rock below, right? Okay, so let me continue reading here. So do not put aside your self-respect and other positive character traits in order to fit in with the crowd. Okay? Just because, and that's the danger of peer pressure, you just want to do it because you want to fit in with the crowd. You want to conform to the crowd. But remember what we say in the peaceful solution. As long as the crowd is doing what's right, that doesn't bring harm to yourself, others, or the environment, you can follow the crowd. That's perfectly fine. But if the crowd is doing something that violates or is against these principles you're learning in the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program, then you need to stand up and you need to say no. Even if you're standing by yourself, don't worry about it. Okay? You'll preserve your health and safety. And you should warn them too. You should be a friend to them and say, hey, if they ask you, well, why aren't you doing it? You should tell them, well, I'm not doing that because, A, B, C, and you shouldn't do it either, man, because I don't want to see you get hurt. Be a friend to them. But if they persist and they want to go their own way, you need to let them do it. Just okay, all right. Well, you warned them. Okay? Make every effort to develop the positive character trait of self-respect. And put up the next slide, the next visual, please. No, not that one. I better go back. Go backwards. You go backwards. Where's the one that had the boy hanging on the tree? Do you see the one with the boy hanging on the limb there? That's in the book. There he is. Okay. That's what I was getting ready to read. I want to give everyone a visual so you can kind of see because it kind of reminded me of Animal Planet, the gators down there and the guys hanging on the tree, the gators are trying to get. It says, make every effort to develop the positive character trait of self-respect. Hang on to it as if your life depends on it. The truth is, it does. Because you fall off that limb and those gators get you, you're done, right? You can think of it like that. You can expect to get chewed up and spit out, okay? So don't put yourself in these kind of situations. That's why I was saying, about the drugs. If that's why I keep warning parents, don't let your children go to these parties, That's what's taking place at the parties. Okay? The drugs are at the parties. I don't care what party it is. There's always going to be drugs. When they say party, that's what they mean, and you should know it. And don't put yourself in those kind of positions, If you have a problem with certain things and you struggle with certain things, don't put yourself in a place where you could be tempted to do something like that, where you can be influenced to do those kind of things. Stay away from, if you have a problem with smoking, don't go to the tobacco center. You don't go to the where they sell tobacco at the store. You can sit there and look at it. You can't do that. Stay away from people that are smoking, stay away from that. That's how I had to end up, that's how I quit smoking, is I kept myself distanced from anyone that was doing it, going in any environment where I knew people would be smoking, etc. I stayed away from it, okay? And I let that urge finally leave my brain and my body, because it's a very real addiction. Remember, what's that stuff in nicotine is a drug. Okay? So you have to come down off it. It has to leave your body. That's why people have these nicotine patches, which I don't think, is the way to go, because all you're doing is you're still getting nicotine, but a lower dose. What you want to do is just quit. You want to cold turkey, quit. Okay, so remember, hang on to your life. Preserve your health and safety, man. And even if everyone else persists in doing something else, you make the right decision, because in the end, you'll be the winner, okay? All right, so now let's go ahead and turn back to LP25 or LP2D and step 6. Step 6 says, explain to students that self-respect is an important positive character trait that we should strive to develop. Okay, it says, we can do so by appreciating that they can do so by appreciating that they are all unique individuals with talents and potential. Have students complete the exercise on page 31 of their handbooks. Have students share some of their talents and abilities, as well as what positive character traits they value and why. Have students read Self-Respect Can Be a Part of Your Character, found on page 32 of our handbooks. So let's turn over to page 31, where it says there's only one you. And you know, what I want to do first is I want to go ahead and can you put up the slide? I thought I had them in order, but the slide that has the character traits, the list of positive character traits, because I want to go over those. And if you don't have the ability to see the screen right now, it's found on page 204 of your manual. If you can't see the screen, if you're not watching us, you're only hearing this, go ahead and turn to page 204 of the manual. Has a list of positive character traits that the Peaceful Solution teaches. And as you can see, the very top character trait there is educated. And educated means getting all the facts and making sure they're correct before we make decisions. And the reason I want to go over these, by the way, is on page 30 in the middle, you know, where what we just read, it said that do not put aside your self-respect and other positive character traits in order to fit in with the crowd. Okay? Don't put these aside. You know, don't shirk these other positive traits just to fit in with what other people, you know, want you to do. That's why I want to read these, because I want to remind us of the positive character traits that that we want to learn to uphold in the Peaceful Solution program, and one of them is that educated. And we saw how education or information, getting all the facts and the correct facts, helps you make better decisions, like the judge learned to do. You know, he learned to make a better decision. Now, you know, of course, it was a little too late because he was, you know, already on his way out as a judge. But he certainly has taken that information and shared it with other judges that are now making decisions. You know, I know he's done different things with other judges to show them what he learned so they too can consider those things. Now, whether they do or not, that's up to them, but at least they can consider what he's telling them, and it might influence them to make better decisions from the bench when they sentence people or they hand out certain punishments to criminals. Okay, so the second character trait that we need to is the one we're working on right now, is respectful, which means to value others as important as ourselves and to allow that to show through our actions and attitudes. Number 3, the positive character trait of patience means demonstrating self-control and remaining calm when we have setbacks or when things don't quite go the way that we think they should go or the way we'd like them to go. Honest. Number 4 is honest and trustworthy, which means being fair, sincere, and straightforward. And number 5, humble. Very, very, very important character trait that we all need to develop is not being proud or arrogant, you know. And that's why it really impresses me when I can see an older person admit that, you know, all those years, you know, I thought I knew something and I didn't really know, and now I know differently, and I would have done differently. And that's the kind of person that you know would take to the Peaceful Solution and really excel in the Peaceful Solution. It's somebody that has that humility where they can understand that, you know, I thought I knew everything and I really don't know what I think I knew. What else don't I know? What else? What other faulty information have I been given over the years? Or what lack of information have I received over the years? Because sometimes it's not the information we receive, it's the information we don't receive. You know, like they like to say, what you don't know won't hurt you. Wrong. It's what you don't know that is hurting you, right? So remember that. Having that humility, not being proud or arrogant toward your teachers, you know. Well, what do you mean? You know, or, you know, looking at your teachers like they don't know what they're talking about, or looking at your parents like, you know, they're from Pluto or something when they tell you to do something, or they warn you against something. You should know, if your parents are telling you not to do something and they're warning you against it, it's because they've probably already been through it themselves, or they know others and they see all the examples of others that are suffering the consequences of those actions, because those actions are immoral, they're wrong, they bring harm to somebody and the environment, etc. So they know that. Your parents know that. Don't sit there and look at them like they don't know what they're talking about. They do know what they're talking about. But remember, a child's brain too, don't forget that, what we're learning. You know, it takes a while for that to develop fully. So number 6 says thankful, to be conscious of the benefits that you've received. You know, sometimes the benefit is a spanking. I know a child doesn't look at a spanking as a benefit, you know, but sometimes I know I got spanked for certain things, and afterwards I didn't like it at first because it hurt, but afterwards I was kind of like, well, at least my dad and my mom loved me enough to correct me and try to set me on the right path. And after all, the spanking, you know, wasn't like it was, I still feel it, you know, 20 years later or even 20 minutes later, you know. And something, I'm not saying spanking is what you should do all the time, but sometimes spanking's something that needs to be done, you know, in times where a child's already been given many opportunities, already been educated in certain areas, and they still choose to rebel. Up to a certain age, a spanking would be, but I'm kind of jumping ahead because that's like way up in the parenting manual. So let me get back to, but anyway, sometimes that's what we all needed was a little spanking. Okay, so, and sometimes, and we should be thankful for that correction that we receive. And we're not when we get it, but I know everybody here, all the adults in the audience that are learning the peaceful solution, how to teach it, if you look back and you think about the correction you got, if it was the correction that was done out of true care and concern, and not, you know, you weren't being beat with a metal rod or locked in the closet for 3 days without any food, or some kind of, you know, correction that was, you know, not appropriate, you probably look back on it now and you think, man, I'm really glad my parents, you know, loved me enough to try to correct me in those situations and talk to me and sit down with me and, you know, and try to set me on a path that was right. Okay, I think we can all appreciate that now, but children, be thankful for it now, you know, while you have the opportunity. Learn to be thankful. Not just for the things that we have, but even for the things we don't have, we should be thankful. Okay, so number 7, forgiving means to refrain from holding anger or resentment towards someone who has wronged you. You know, not holding those grudges, trying to go to that person, as we've learned. And remember what we learned in the anger chapter of the self-control unit on chapter 3 about appropriate ways of dealing with anger, you know, not holding on to things, not holding on to ill feelings about someone, but going to them and talking to them about it and trying to resolve things in a peaceful manner. Number 8, steadfast and persistent, meaning we're determined not to give up or change what we've set out to accomplish. And in this case, we all right now, we see the value in these positive character traits. We see the value in the Peaceful Solution program, and we see the value in developing a positive moral character. We all see the value of it. That's why we're here. We see the value of it not only in our lives, but we see the value of, if I taught this to other people, I can see how this would really help my community or really help my family or really help our society if we taught one person at a time. And it reminds me of a sheriff down in Laredo, Texas I used to work with. He gave a really great speech at one of our award ceremonies, and he talked about the starfish, you know. And there was a bunch of starfish on the beach, washed up on the shore, and some guy was taking a starfish and throwing it back in the water, and he was going down the beach line there, you know, picking up starfish, throwing them back in the water. And somebody asked him, "What are you doing? You know, look at all these starfish, you know, and you're gonna help all these starfish?" And he goes, "No, you know, I'm gonna do one at a time." You know, we're trying to help one person at a time, you know, and we're trying to save the starfish, you know, the whole beach full of starfish. But sometimes it's just one person at a time. You know, even if your class is only one or two people, are they not worth your time? Are they not worth your effort? Are they not worth setting on a positive path? Because that one person could be the person that breaks into your house, molests your child, shoots your neighbor, beats his wife, or whatever. That one person, when you teach them and train them in positive moral character, how many problems, how many crimes, how many actions that are negative are you saving our planet from? Even if it's one person. Think about it. Now, multiply that by 8 billion people. But we can only do it one person at a time, you know, or one class at a time or whatever. But you're not wasting your time when you teach even 2, 3, 4 people or 100 people. You know, it's not all for nothing. You're planting the seeds in their mind, and they might only remember one thing 10 years later that you taught them that actually changed their whole way of thinking. Believe it or not, you know, a lot of us don't even remember what we learned yesterday. You know, maybe possibly, you know, 10% of what we learned yesterday we might remember, but we certainly hold on to certain things in our mind that were very, you know, that really like a frying pan moment to us, you know. And I meet students all the time that I used to teach years ago, and they always say, you know, that one thing you taught me about, and they remember something, and they say that really helped me with my anger, that really helped me with, and you know, because it helped them, that means it avoided a lot of problems. How many things that they might have done, but because they got this information from the peaceful solution, they avoided that behavior. They avoided retaliating. They avoided stealing. They avoided whatever it was that was negative. You know, so never underestimate what you're doing as a teacher here. And then number 9, self-control means not giving in or yielding to impulsive thoughts and actions. Remember, we learned in, I believe it was a character unit, about the word impulsive and how impulsive means not, you know, a lot of people, when they hear the word impulsive, they tend to think, you know, well, that means you do things without thinking first. You know, well, that's not true, because we learn in the peaceful solution, we're always thinking, you know, but what we're not thinking about when we make those kind of choices, when we make certain choices, we're not thinking about all the consequences of the choice we're getting ready to make. And that's an impulsive choice that we want to learn to avoid. And it takes practice. You know, it's not something that people can just do overnight, you know. It takes patience. It takes being humble. Remember how all these work synergistically? I know David really likes that word, you know, so I'm going to use it in honor of David. He's a great friend of mine, and he's a great teacher. So I'm going to say, you know, synergistically, okay? You know, and think about, you know, when you make right choices, look at all these positive character traits, and you can see how they all blend in and they actually work together as a whole. You need one to do the other. And when you do one, you're actually doing all of them at once. Okay, so don't ever think that, well, I'm really thankful, you know, but I'm not humble. Well, it takes a humble person to be thankful, you know. So don't think you're not they're not all working together in some way. And it takes self-control to be thankful. Okay? It takes steadfastness and persistence to be, thankful, because you have to do it consistently. You don't want to give up on it, right? You don't want to be thankful one day and the next day unthankful, so remember all these things. Okay. Where was I? Okay, yeah, we're on page 31. And I only got 5 minutes left, but I guess we could get started, and Catan he's going to be the next teacher, so he can pick up wherever I leave off here. I'm sure he'll review all this for us again here on page 31. So let's go ahead and start on There is Only One You. It says, when you take the time to evaluate who you are as an individual, as well as what you value, you're less likely to make choices that could result in risky behavior, such as premarital sex, abusing alcohol, or using illegal drugs. When someone firmly believes that he should build a positive moral character and have positive values, he's less likely to give in to negative influences. Now, you see that? That's why you in the audience and those that are watching, those that are taking the time to be trained, this is why, you're not giving in to those things you used to give into, because now you've taken the time to evaluate who you are as an individual, what your choices are. Remember evaluating, doing self-evaluations on, how I could have done this or how I should have done that. Not critiquing yourself or criticizing yourself just to be criticizing yourself in a negative way, but to show, okay, well, here's what I did. Here's what I could do better next time, and setting your mind in advance, as we learned in the character unit, setting your mind in advance to make better decisions in the future and not fall into the same pattern of behavior next time, not making the same, choice next time, avoiding that negative choice. So you're going to be less likely to make choices that can result in risky behavior because you value these things. You see the value in it. And it says, when someone firmly believes that they should build a positive character, moral character, and have positive values, they're less likely to give in to negative influences. Just like you firmly believe, if you jump out of an airplane without a parachute, you don't think you're going to live, do you? I don't know. Some people might. I don't know. I've never met anybody that does, and I've read stories about people that have fallen 35,000 feet out of the sky and landed in a tree. I don't know if it's true. I just read it. But for the most part, you ain't living, and you're not. So you're not going to step out of a plane, are you? You're not just going to open the hatch and get sucked out, and because you firmly believe you're going to die. Right? Well, we should firmly believe, as we learn this valuable information in the peaceful solution, and we see the results in our world of people who aren't following the peaceful solution, we see all the suffering and the pain and the agony that the world is going through. We should firmly believe that we need to build a positive character, not only in ourselves, but in our students. We should firmly believe that. And you do firmly believe that. That's why you're here. Okay. The process of learning to show respect for yourself begins when you appreciate that you're a unique individual. Although you and a sister, brother, or friend might have similar characteristics, there's only one you. And that's remarkable, man. Think about that. I think about that when I think of music, all these millions of, I'm sure there's millions of songs that have been written over over time, over thousands of years. But none of them are the same, unless they do a rehash of one or something. But they're all different. And it's like, how do people come up with new ideas for a song when it seems like they've all been sung or all those tunes have been used already? But no. People still come up with new songs. Or, that was just one example, but when you think about 8 billion people on the planet, And you think about all the trillions of people that have already lived on the planet, and you know there's only one you that's exactly like you. That's an amazing thing that we're all different like that. It's surprising that we don't all, like a bunch of us look the same, but no, we might have similar features, but there's no one like us. We're unique individuals. There's nobody that's a carbon copy of us on this planet. Okay, when you stop to consider all the things that make you who you are, you will find that there's more to you than you realize. Okay? And that's what's great about the peaceful solution. It gets you to think about, it gets you to look on the inside, it gets you to want to change what's on the inside and be aware of what's going on the inside, not just on the outside, how my hair looks, how's my shirt, how's my tie, Mom, do I have my shirt tucked in, You're thinking about what's going on the inside, and you're being determined to change these things, okay? And you're aware of these things, and you want to change, and you feel like, oh man, I shouldn't have done that. That's great that you feel you shouldn't have done that. If you don't care that you did it, then it was negative, then I'd be worried. But at least you care about it. At least you're striving. So keep on doing that. So today's 2/5, 6, 7. Would it be the 8th? Yeah, the next class will be on 2/8/2023 at 5:30 p.m. Central Time, and Catan will be our next teacher. He's a great teacher, so make sure you tune in, and we'll all see you next time. Thank you for joining us this evening.